Today I'll be interviewing my best friend from college, KatiLin Stone. She is a knitwear designer based in California, and she has her bachelor's degree in fashion design, and she specialized in knitwear. I'll be asking her questions on what it was like going to fashion school, internships, and all about her work experience, so you guys can get a better understanding of what it's like to be a fashion designer. The first question is about fashion school at FIT. That's where we met, by the way. So, what are the main classes you take in fashion school?
Mainly throughout all the semesters, you're going to be taking a fashion art class. I think maybe first semester or first year you take also a life drawing class. But that's just really to fine tune any of your fine art skills and to learn the fashion figure. And then your other main course will be draping, which you'll know with take the fabric, place it on the mannequin, learn all about grain and just how to drape different fabrics. And then you'll also be taking a couple pattern making classes. I would say I struggled most with those, but that's really important to get the fit of the garment. And then you'll also learn skills for specking, which you'll be doing a lot of in the future. And then we also take a couple computer classes. The main ones, though, I would say are Illustrator and Photoshop, which you'll be using your whole life, the rest of your life. If you're a designer, for sure, Illustrator, which helps a lot with tech packs, and then, Photoshop.
Someone is asking, do you think the design school you go to matters? FIT, Parsons versus a lesser known college in another state?
It doesn't necessarily matter, I don't think, which school you go to, because I've had a lot of different internships or jobs where people will be coming from Pratt or SCAD or Kent, and those all have really good design programs too. Plus, some of the teachers who teach at FIT also teach at Parsons, also teach at SCAD, so they're all kind of intertwined. And I don't know the direct course load that you guys would be taking at different schools, but if you want to make sure that you're learning a certain skill, you could probably look up online what their course program is. And there's also international schools. So Florence, there's Polymoda, and then there's just a Polytechno. There's another school in Milan, and then Central St. Martin's obviously is a really, really good school, and then London College of the Arts. There's a million schools you could go to.
Do you have to go into fashion school knowing exactly what you want to do in the future?
No, because I don't think anybody knows what they want to do in the future. I mean, some people do. I mean, when I was younger, I always wanted to go into either something in entertainment or design, just because I liked art, I liked creative things. So I always knew I wanted to go to a specialized school. So I was when I found FIT and a specialized school, I was this is perfect, I'll go there. But a lot of people in the fashion industry, specifically, they'll burn out quite quickly in the industry just because it's really tough. And by the time they're 30, they could be doing something completely different. But I would say the same goes for any industry. You don't have to know what you're doing. Straight out of high school, life changes.
Do you need a fashion design degree to get a fashion design job?
I don't think you necessarily need a fashion design degree. I think it helps. A lot of companies now may require it. You don't necessarily need a bachelor's. You can just get your associates, or if you do some certificate programs. But you can get jobs in a bunch of different ways. It could be through word of mouth. Maybe someone knows you. I don't think you necessarily need a degree, but I think it helps a lot because you learn a lot of different skills.
What level of education do you need to get into the fashion industry to work as a fashion designer?
Again, I think that corresponds with the last question. So I would say at least an associate's degree, because you do learn a lot of stuff and a lot of jobs now do require a degree. FIT offers associates and bachelors, but it's just better if you went to a school that specializes in it. You couldn't get a job from word of mouth where someone else just recommends you, but I think at least an associate's degree would help you get a job.
Do you need to understand sewing, pattern making, and draping to become a fashion designer?
Yes, because if you don't understand any of those things, you're not going to be able to make a garment and let the factory know how to make your garment, because everything goes hand in hand. If you don't understand sewing, you're not going to know what to tell the factory, what types of stitches. Pattern making, same thing. You're going to have to know if you can create that silhouette. Does it exist? Does it not? and there's like a lot of problem solving and things that intertwine into all those different categories. Maybe draping. Maybe if you don't know draping, I think you could be okay, but it definitely helps to know draping.
Okay. So talk a little bit about your portfolio that you made to get into FIT.
My portfolio to get into FIT, I took pre-college programs when I was 16. I took 2 fashion art classes and I think 2 draping classes, and then at the end I took a portfolio class. So if you have no clue what you're doing, or you really like art, or you really want to guarantee that you're going to hopefully get into FIT, I would suggest going onto their website and looking into their pre-college programs. Plus, the professors who teach the pre-college programs are the professors who are going to be teaching you in the future. Like, we had Stippleman, he was really good. So for my portfolio, from the 2 sewing classes that we did, I presented 2 garments, and I think that was a straight skirt and then a basic short. And then for the portfolio part of it, like the fashion art, I think we did 4 to 6 looks, maybe more. But I did a basic sportswear one, which it had a mix and match, like a lame skirt and like, I don't know, it's so outdated. It had like
and we had to include the little flounce swatches.
It had a cropped jacket, like all cut out with like a little flounce around it. Very early, like mid 2000s, I don't know. And then I also did a cabbage dress, which was weird because I just was pulling inspiration.
Cabbage,
yeah, I was just pulling inspiration. I was like, I don't know.
I know.
I'm not that creative yet.
I had a dress inspired by like a basket of pears. So
it's hard to get into FIT. You need to know how to draw, but like as far as the inspiration and their whole process, unless you're an extremely advanced person or you're older than we were, inspiration you can pull from anywhere. But that was essentially my portfolio.
How would you describe your senior thesis portfolio?
Basically, when you're in FIT, your entire time when you're doing any type of project or final garment, make it as nice, or just go hard into it, because that you can present in the future to your job interviews. Senior thesis portfolio compared to what I entered with was a lot more complicated. There was a lot more figures. I don't know how many exactly, maybe 16. The inspiration made more sense. So like when I was originally applying, my inspiration was just random on almost every outfit. For your senior thesis, it has to be more like put together and everything, so it's like it tells a story. So my inspiration that I pulled from was Antelope Canyon with all the different twists and turns and like the colors. So I used like baby alpaca yarn, knit a 12 gauge stole machine dress with like lots of pleating, different colors. Natalia can show you a picture of that. That one made it down the runway. The other one did not, but I wish it did because I think it would have looked good. But yeah, you're from entering to leaving, you learn a lot more. It's a lot more cohesive.
What would you say was the most important thing that you learned in school?
The most important thing I learned in school was probably how to meet deadlines, because there's a lot. And that just helps in life in general, because when you go into work life, you're going to be working on not one season, you're going to be working on spring, fall, pre-fall, little capsules. I don't know where you're going to be working, but you're working and managing different deadlines. So that's what I learned. And it wasn't a class. That's just like something I gained knowledge in.
Our schedules were like jam-packed, and we always had a lot of classes, a lot to juggle. So I definitely agree. Yeah. Time management was an essential skill.
I just think also in general, just learning all the different skills we did for fashion design were important, like the draping and all that, just because you need to know how a garment's made.
The next section is about internships. So how can you get internships?
There's a lot of different ways. One is by word of mouth, and if you're lucky to know someone, they can help get you an internship. 2, FIT has a job bank, and you can also search for different types of internships. I think they mostly use that though for senior year, because you have to have accredited internship. Before that, it's not required, but I highly suggest getting a few on your resume, because otherwise when you graduate, I'm not really sure what you're going to have besides that you went to school. I would Google fashion internships, so freefashioninternships.com. I used to use that. I'm not sure how everything is now since COVID. And then also LinkedIn posts a lot of different fashion internships.
True. And then you can also try to cold email different brands.
Yeah, that would be my last resort.
Yeah.
You can go on to different websites, like brands that you really love and they inspire you. You can scroll down to the bottom and look at like the careers section. Maybe they'll have like a careers at whatever.com. You can email them, the HR person. You can also, another trick, which is also related to jobs, is if you go on LinkedIn, you can go to the company's profile and then you can click people who work there and then you can see who the HR person is and you can try to connect with them and message them and send a nice message. Be like, hi, my name's Natalia. I'm graduating or I'm studying at FIT and I was wondering if you had any internship openings. I really love your company and would like to work for you.
Perfect. That is a perfect response. Okay, so I'm ready to hire. I'm ready to hire you. Okay. So what does a fashion design intern do? I know there's like a stereotype. People think fashion design interns fetch coffee and sweep the floor.
There's definitely good internships, and then I would say there is not so great internships. I think since there was some issues, I think people are now paid, but you might still have to do unpaid work. I'm saying if it's your first internship ever and they're not paying you, just look at what are you learning. Maybe it's just a resume, like maybe it's just for your resume. You just need a brand on your resume. But I would say that only maybe work for free for like a couple of months. Otherwise, then it's kind of gets costly with like the subway and like what you're doing. But as far as what do interns do, I remember when I was in New York, it was a lot of running to the garment district, which was tedious and I didn't love, but you get to know a lot of different factories. You got to know like trim places, fabric places, me and Natalia both have like a huge list of places that we've had to run for different jobs or internships. So like I would say those are important to like write down. So you get insider knowledge that you might not have had before just getting to know the garment industry. But in general, maybe if you're at a more corporate company, hopefully they'll treat you better because there's HR, and you will do a lot of probably helping the assistants with tech packs. So that's something you would learn in school, but it's mostly how the garment's made. You'll be updating because there's tons and tons and tons of updates once they have different line reviews. So that's mostly what interns will be doing. And then I would say there is filing too, because it's not just because like we just want you to file, but you have to be extremely organized. There's so many things that we're producing that we just need everything organized. So a lot of organizing too, but mostly helping with tech packs.
Do you need to intern before getting a fashion design job? I feel like you kind of answered this question.
Yeah, I would say it definitely helps. You should have an internship or two before getting a job, because then I don't know what else you'd have on your resume. Unless you're coming from a completely different industry, then they can already see that you have a good work ethic. Or if you don't want to be an intern and like you can't find a place because it's really competitive, maybe at least be like a sales associate or do something in like textiles or something that just shows that you know how to stay at a job and be like committed to it and that you are interested in the fashion industry.
Our next segment will be life after graduation and looking for a fashion design job. You have your portfolio from FIT from senior year. You did the internships, you graduate, now you're looking for a job. So the most popular question was, where do you search for fashion design jobs?
Searching for a fashion design job is very similar to searching for an internship. FIT has a job bank, which again, if you don't want to do an internship, you can also find freelance positions. So I had done some freelance things with the University of Fashion. Actually, I recorded like a class thing, but FIT has a job bank. Then you also have the career center, so hopefully they'll be able to help you get an interview somewhere, maybe, I don't know. And then LinkedIn. I'm a huge fan of LinkedIn. So looking on LinkedIn, searching jobs. I don't know if Indeed has it, maybe. I think on the West Coast, people use Malachi a lot for different fashion jobs. What else? Working with a recruiter works too. So I think Fourth Floor is one of them. There's a bunch of different, you can look up fashion design job recruiters, and you don't pay them a fee or anything, but they help you get a job. Well, you do a normal interview with them, and then they'll try to find you a job that doing something you like. But sometimes it's easier because I know companies who will only work with recruiters.
Are there a lot of fashion design jobs?
I think that there's a decent amount of fashion design jobs. I don't know how it is to the ratio of fashion designers. I know now because of COVID, there was a decent amount of people who had gotten maybe laid off. So fashion in general is extremely competitive. So it's just like heightens the competitiveness of how it is now. There are jobs, again, you can look on LinkedIn or Indeed or something, but there's jobs. They're just really competitive and may be hard to get.
Is it difficult getting a fashion design job after college?
Straight out of college, I think it's sometimes hard for anybody to get a job. You'll have some people who are really lucky, and that's why internships are important.
Yeah, because some people, like, they intern senior year and then they get offered the job.
So that happened to some people, and then also just if you had an internship before, you can reach out to those people and be like, hey, I'm graduating in the spring. If you know of anybody hiring, or if you guys are hiring, please let me know. I think in general for getting a fashion job, yeah, it's difficult, but it's difficult to get almost any job. So you just have to be like really passionate about it. Make sure you have a good resume. There are also people, I think, at FIT that will look at your resume. I think you do all of that senior year in general. Send it to your friends, send it to your parents to look it over. But yeah, it is kind of hard to get a job, but some people also get it.
Another popular question, what is the job application and hiring process like?
So for the job application, it's usually you see the job posted and you'll apply with a resume. Every fashion designer always needs a portfolio. So I would highly suggest in our age that you have a digital portfolio. A lot of people will ask for work samples, so that could be just like condensed, a small PDF, high quality of your best samples, but only send things that you think are related to the company. Like if you're applying,
relevant to that job.
If you're applying for a sweater position, don't just send like outerwear pieces or bathing suits. You want to like apply and like know what you're applying for. So you apply with your portfolio and everything. If they like you, usually HR or maybe someone else, depending how small the company is, will contact you and do a phone screening. They'll ask you basic questions like to walk you through your resume and everything, ask if you're interested in the position. They might talk about salary in the beginning. They might ask what you're looking for. It's just hard because when you're coming straight out of school, as far as salary and everything, I don't know what a good salary is now, but I think the normal starting salary was about $50,000. A lot of people, though, in the like intern interview process will ask how much you're looking for, and it's kind of a game you have to play. I think whoever speaks first loses. That's kind of how it goes. But if they ask you, we were wondering how much you were looking for, then you just turn the question back on them and be like, oh, I was actually wondering how much this salary range was for this position. And then you'll know. Yeah. And then you can gauge it from there. And of course, it goes off of experience and everything. Once you have the screen phoning, they'll usually call you in, or it'll be over Zoom, because I don't know what the process is like right now during COVID, since COVID, but you'll interview with like whoever is hiring. So even though the assistant is hiring, it's really different at every company. It could be the design director, it could be the designer, it could be the assistant designer interviewing you, but eventually they interview with the team. Again, it's the same thing. You go through what your experience is. If they like you, they'll give you a project to do. So, and then the project is always up for interpretation. They give you enough information, but they also want to see your creativity. So I'd say really go for it, but also make sure it's on brand. After that, they'll look at your project, and then they might bring you in for another interview, and then you might have to interview with like the design director or VP of design, and then after that, they either offer you the job or not. If they don't offer you the job, then don't worry about it. It wasn't meant to be. But I would just like leave your doors open and be like, thanks for the interview process. Look forward to working with you in the future.
Love it. What are your interview tips for landing the job?
I would suggest to definitely research the company a bit, know the background, know the history, know what their aesthetic is. They don't always ask you that, but it's just good to know who you're interviewing with. I would also, again, look on LinkedIn and research the employees that you will be interviewing with just to see their job titles, so you're familiar with it. And then also, before the interview, review the position again and make sure that you just state all the bullet points of what the key responsibilities would be, that you're capable of doing those things. Always be polite and send thank you notes, not actual notes. I mean, I guess you can if you're landing another job, not over the phone, but just emails. And then also do well in your design project.
What are your tips for creating a portfolio that lands you a job?
I would just say to, again, research the brand and then make sure that you like pull inspiration from what they're using. Like if you're interviewing for like an outerwear or sweater position, just go on their company website, look at what they've done in the past, be familiar, and then design something similar to it, but try to make it a little bit more creative, but also be aware of price points. But I think when you're doing job interview projects, they're mostly looking for creativity and that you understand the brand.
So after nailing the interview and having a gorgeous portfolio, you get the job. What does an entry-level fashion designer do?
An entry-level fashion designer is mostly there to support the associate and the designer, because usually if they need an assistant, they need someone to help. So it's a lot with helping with the different tech packs. There's a lot of updates that come from the merchandise team and just different line reviews. You'll be touching the same tech pack hundreds of times before it goes all the way through to the finalized process. So it's a lot of tech packing. I still think organization is important. You need to be organized because sometimes you need to track packages. You might be, if I guess you pass a color test or if you're good enough, you'll be responsible for lab dips and trim approvals. So it's like the basic things, what you would be doing. You always start from the bottom and you work your way up, but it's mostly to help the associate and the designer get their workload done.
And can you briefly just go over tech packs for people who don't know what that is?
I feel like you have a tech pack that you could probably show them, but the tech pack is the tech pack explains to the factory how to make the garment. So there could be a comments page or there could be a BOM page depending if you have a system. It usually has a black and white CAD of the sketch. And then on the next page, there'll be the colorways. So it'll call it like ivory, black, blah, blah, blah. It'll have the style number on it. It'll have the fabric information on it. It'll have what season it is, the sizes that the garment will be made out of, the date that you last updated it. And then the colorways it'll break down. If it's a color block, it'll break down like A, B, C, D, all the different colors, how that's made. It just goes into all the details of how the garment is made. And then there'll be a detail page and it'll call out like, it might call out like detail measurements of like what the trim should be or how the trim is knit or how it's sewed on or if it's flat lock or cover lock or overlock stitch, and it just goes into all the details. And then there's a measurement page. So there's a spec sheet, but sometimes the spec sheet doesn't have all the details on it, so that would come back to the tech pack that would have the more details on it of like how to make a pocket or how far the pocket is from like the side or from the bottom hem. If there's any trims, there'll be a trim page. If there's artwork or embroidery, there'll be an artwork page or a cable layout page to see like how big or how wide something is. And then there will be, maybe on the last page, there'll be like all the trim details and the care label. So it'll tell you where to insert it for the factory because they need to know exactly how to make the garment.
Right. It's definitely detail-oriented work.
Extremely.
Yeah, extremely. Could you explain what are the different fashion design positions in a company?
I'll just start with designers. So I guess the bottom would be like interns, apprentices. You can freelance in any position. There could be a freelance designer or it could be an assistant designer. But so there's assistant, then it's associate, then there's designer 1 sometimes, depending how big the company is. It could be designer 2, designer 3. Then it could be the design director, and then it would be the VP of design, and then the CEO. And then on the other side, there's also the tech designers, who those are the ones who will come in, help you with the fitting, and do all the specking of the garments and make sure the measurements and everything are good. There might be pattern makers, or the tech person also might be the pattern maker. It really depends if you're at a small company or a big company. There's also production managers and people who keep the calendar going so you know all the dates that you're hitting are on time and everything, and they correspond with the factories overseas and just make sure everything's coming in. Sometimes if you're at a bigger company, there will be a fabric coordinator, so they will handle all the different fabrics. They'll correspond with the vendors and everything. Unless you're at a small company, then you guys gotta do all of that. Then there's sometimes, again, for big companies, there could be a graphic designer for the fashion side, and there will be a graphic design for the e-com side. For the fashion design side, for the graphic designers, if you're on the West Coast, I feel like a lot of fashion designers will be really graphic designers, and they'll be doing a lot of different prints for like the surf brands and everything. They could also be making the different trims and like the label artwork. Again, if you're at a small company, you might have to do all of that. And then depending also where you are, there might have in-house seamstresses, or that might just be outsourced to the different factories where they are, or local in the garment district. And then there's a whole like e-com side team to the business, so that's the whole website. So there's someone who manages the website, like the e-commerce manager, and they keep track of all the like traffic coming into the website, and they like do a bunch of Google ads and stuff, Pinterest, and try to get people to click on it. And there's also a marketing team. There's so much that goes into fashion design.
There's a lot. So if people are, want to do fashion but aren't exactly sure if they want to design, there's plenty of
lot of different positions.
Do you have to be good at drawing or just be able to get ideas across?
I would say you need to be good at drawing, because some companies require you to hand sketch, but you at least need to know how to sketch on the computer. Drawing's important, but you also need to know how to be able to convey your idea.
What is a typical work day or work week like for you?
For me, for everyone, anybody, you're super busy all the time. Usually on Mondays, you'll have like touch base or whatever meetings you need to have to go. You correspond with the rest of the designers, see what everybody's working on, if they've finished what they'd worked on from the week before, and then you would divvy it up and then start working on it. Like, for example, me, I'm working on a lot. I'm working on spring 22 designing, but also working on following up for like getting protos in to review for fall 22 sweaters. Then I still get in some semi-customs and customs for fall 21 sweaters. I mostly deal with sweaters, so that's why. But then you're also working with like trim development, making sure like a bunch of things are on the calendar. You're working on a lot of things all at the same time. I can't think of everything right now, but it's a lot you're working on.
What is the timeline of developing a product to getting it out in stores?
I think it would take a minimum of maybe 9 months to fully, depending on how big your collection is, I guess, and how many styles and like what type of things you're doing and what factories you're working with and their deadlines. But I think it takes a minimum of maybe 9 months to fully get everything from the inspiration phase all the way to like in the warehouse, ready to send out to the customers. It even takes longer than that, because I'm still working on styles that I touched in fall 20 sometimes, because they might need something changed. Fall 21, you're constantly working on it, but I would say 9 months maybe minimum to get everything from start to finish.
How many people do you work with on the design team?
For me, I work with 2 other designers. A senior designer and another designer who helps me and the senior designer, because she's just joined our team. But you also work with like the creative director too. You'll work with the tech person to get the specs and stuff out. You'll work with production to make sure you're meeting the calendar. You're talking to trim people. You're talking to a lot of people at the same time.
What programs do you need to know, especially on a day-to-day basis?
Illustrator. 100% you need to know. Microsoft Excel, you don't need to be like a wizard or anything, but you need to know how to use it. I use still Microsoft Word, and then Photoshop I use. And then we do a lot with PDFs too, so the Adobe PDF Reader. And then maybe your company will have you work on like a PLM system or something.
Can you explain what a PLM system is for people that don't know?
Yeah. I need to look up the actual definition. You can like write it. PLM means this. Yeah. But it's just a management system that has like BOM. Do people know bill of material and bill of material and everything in? So it could break down what the garment has. Like if a garment has snaps on it, it'll say like it'll have a style number or code. You plug that in and it'll tell you the price. It's just a giant system that keeps track. If you're at, again, a corporate big company, smaller companies don't have enough money for a PLM system, so they'll probably have to have those all in Excel. But the PLM system is supposed to be easier for you to like organize your styles, be able to reference it, and then like things are linked to each other and you basically input everything into there.
What is your creative process?
I usually get a creative brief from the creative director, and then from there we'll do a lot of researching. She brings in a lot of ideas, but people still use like Pinterest and stuff. But you can look at vintage pieces. You should definitely always be looking at your competitors to see if you're in the same market. Go out in the market, go shopping. If you're in New York or LA, go to Dover Street Market. You can look, if you're part of FIT, you have for a lifetime, you have like a lifetime membership, I think, to like WGSN, maybe Fashion Snoops, I don't know. But I mostly use WGSN to see different trend reports and then you take all that inspiration, you create a SKU plan, which is basically you're like thinking about what styles you need, what you did last season, you're taking best sellers and everything, and you're going to make sure it like merchandises together and you have enough pieces. And then from there you start your collection and then you start designing and make sure you have everything, and then that's when your line plan starts.
What can you do to succeed in the industry and move up?
That's a good question. I think you should always be like a hard worker, and people will know. You will know in your industry if you're doing your job or not. I mean, we have to physically produce items, tech packs, things will come out. People are asking lots of questions. There's a lot of moving parts. So I would be organized. Be very organized. If you want to get promoted to somewhere, I'd say have a talk with your manager, supervisor, or even going into the position, be like, I know I'm starting as an assistant, but like I have my sights set on becoming an associate. Let me know how I can get there. Now, some companies are tricky because it takes a really long time to get promoted at some places just because that's how it is. So sometimes even leaving the company that you're at and coming back will get you. Or if you're very persuasive and you have a good relationship with like the CEO or the HR person or whoever it is that you need to have a good relationship with, that can help promote you. It should be based on work, but I know it's tricky to move up in some companies just because it's just hard and they would rather bring a new talent. It just is really up to the company. But as long as you're a hard worker, everyone will know it.
What are pros and cons of working in the fashion industry?
The pros of working in the fashion industry. I think most people think it's a pretty cool job. Whenever you say, I'm a fashion designer, they're always interested in it. You get to design. You're not just doing something like that like some people might think is boring and just like typing on a computer all day long. You are working on the computer a lot, which I don't love that.
Right, because most people kind of assume that for a fashion design job, you're illustrating, making these beautiful illustrations, you're sewing, you're draping.
Unless you're a senior designer or the creative director and you're at like a super high-end brand in like Paris or Europe or somewhere, then yeah, maybe all you're doing all day is just designing, making beautiful illustrations, and other people are executing your work. If you're climbing your way up, or just in general, if you're not like a haute couture company and you're just at any other company really, you will be designing on the computer a lot. It's not like draping at all. I'm trying to think what companies I worked at that had a mannequin. Some companies had a mannequin. Yeah, I would drape on it for a little bit just to get a proto. Like you might have to do that, but they don't even have the assistants do that really. I mean, sometimes they do. I guess you would work hand in hand with a technical designer or something. If you just want to see what it's going to look like. And that's the other thing is if there's seamstresses and stuff, they will make up those pieces. Yeah. So it's not what you think. It's a lot of you're on the computer. here's your computer, learn Illustrator. I need you to sketch this sketch now.
Yes.
Okay, make sure everything's organized, and if you have any questions, let me know. That's really what it's going to be for assistance. And then as you just go in deeper, you get a lot more responsibility, and you have to coordinate with different people. But no, I'm not. I mean, I haven't worked at a company, but I know some companies only like hand drawing, and you're doing that, but you're also still working on the computer.
Yeah.
Doing tech packs. You're going to have to translate your hand drawing flat or sketch into a computerized technical flat, just because it's easier for everyone to see, to make notes on and everything.
What are pros and cons of working in the fashion industry? I know we got a little sidetracked.
You're designing clothes, which I guess helps people like with their identity. Like, I know a lot of people would be like, oh, what do you do for a living? You just design clothes. Like, what are you contributing to society, really? But clothing is kind of like an identity for a person. So like that's kind of what you're doing, which is kind of cool. You can hopefully work towards becoming a more sustainable company. And that leads into the cons of working in the fashion industry. I know a lot of people in my class, or like fellow designers and stuff, who is like, why are we in the fashion industry? We're just creating a lot of waste. Yeah. It's like a fun process, but then you think about what you're actually doing, and it's like, ooh, how can I help the environment? And I would just say, try to push working for a company that really values like being sustainable, using like vegan leather, eco-friendly materials, just because there's a lot of waste that comes out of the fashion industry. So I would say that's probably the biggest con. And then people also sometimes in the industry act like we're saving lives. We're not really saving lives. Like, it's like a life or death matter. Like, you're designing. I think everyone just needs to calm down sometimes and just like, we're just designing clothes. I know all the deadlines are really tight, but we can get through it type thing. You need to have a sense of urgency and kind of a thick skin, but yeah.
On a lighter note, what is the best part for you working in fashion?
The best part for me is once the design is done and completed, is seeing it being sold in a store or on a person, or my friend will text me and they'll be like, hey, like I saw so-and-so wearing like this sweater that you designed, or then there's like a publication that like gets written about the design that you did, and like you get to see it in like magazines that you used to read when you were younger. So I would say that's definitely probably the most rewarding thing.
Do you always like the pieces you design for work?
No, and I think everybody should know that, like, you're not always gonna like what you're designing unless you're working for like the brand that is completely your aesthetic. I mean, everything's different. It's not your full total design direction and control. It's what the company wants. It's customer centric.
The customer.
It's customer centric. Yeah. So it's not like you can't be like, ugh, I don't want to design that. Like, that's your job. And like kind of part of your job as a designer and to be a good designer is, even if you don't like it, maybe make it look better than like if you don't, make the design look better than it could be. You should be a good designer. Can design for, I would say, any brand, any company. It's not just about designing for what you want or what you like.
Is fashion as competitive and cutthroat as people think?
I think it is as competitive as you think, yeah. 100%. Is it as cutthroat as you think? What? As compared to The Devil Wears Prada? There are some...
Probably.
Yeah, it depends where you work. I'm not going to say no. I've heard stories of companies that I'm not going to name that it is exactly like The Devil Wears Prada. But as long as you can find a group of people that you really like working with, that's like the most important thing. Because remember, you're spending 8 hours of every day with them. You spend more time with them than your best friends or than your family. Like, these people become your friends and your family. So... yeah. It is cutthroat sometimes, but like I feel like that's almost, it could be the older generation or the more high end, but we need to like dissolve that, and just everybody needs to be able to get along. We all have a common goal. Just get your job done.
Did you feel prepared to enter the fashion industry after you graduated?
Yes, because I think I had like 6 internships. I had a lot of internships. And I'm a super extrovert, and I really like interviewing. I felt prepared. Was it hard and competitive? Yes. Did I get a fashion job right out of school? No. I went on a lot of interviews with places that are big name companies or places that I interned at, I would get to like the last round and then it would be given to someone else. Sometimes it was even given to like a classmate or something. So that's the other thing, is the industry is very small. So like, stay friends with everyone, or at least stay stay.
And like people you're friends with will become like part of your network.
They will become part of your network, because I know a lot of people like in my grade at least that are at like all these different companies.
What was it like adapting to your job during the start of the pandemic?
I think that was hard for everybody, because we're in design, specifically fashion design, you need to kind of be in, you don't have to be in the office, but like you're very hands-on with a product. You constantly have samples and trims and protos and photo shoot samples and like things coming in all the time, and you have to have all these design meetings. So it was kind of hard, but it wasn't too hard. Like I remember before quarantine even started, I was like to my boss, I was like, I need a day off, and they're like, that's probably never gonna happen. And then a week later, quarantine, and we worked from home we were still at home. We are doing a hybrid now where we go into the office, but during quarantine we would, and everybody's different, we would meet on Zoom every single day and have meetings, a lot of meetings. It honestly wasn't that hard. It was just kind of lonely sometimes when it was like actual quarantine, when you couldn't like, all you could do was go for a walk. But you adjust.
I know. I remember.
You adjust to it. I think I'm like the design people, at least. I feel like there was a part where you weren't allowed to go into the office. We still had to go into the office at least once a week to get a package, or the package would be sent to our house. Because there's, like I said, it's very hands-on.
Right.
There's lots of moving parts. You need to physically see the garment and meet with people, and you have to have fittings, which is also hard. So that became virtual too. And like maybe just the technical designer and the model would be there, everyone wearing masks, of course, but then they would have Zoom meetings.
Is going to fashion school worth it, in your opinion?
I think so. I wouldn't change my experience for anything. Well, this was me coming right out of college. Mind you, there's a lot of people who were in totally different industries who were older, and they came. So I was like a freshman, like a normal age freshman, but then there'd be people who were 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 even at FIT, and they were just like, it was like a second career. I think you're very lucky to know if like your first career you want to do is fashion, because that's what I always wanted to do. Was like, I knew I wanted to go to a specialized school, so you feel like you have like the upper hand, so by the time you're their age you would even have more experience. But going to fashion school was worth it, yes, because you get to meet a lot of people and also take advantage of all the different competitions. There's a lot of competitions where you will meet other people. You can win things like internships and stuff, and scholarships. I think fashion school's worth it. If you're in state, I don't think the tuition's that much. It's like $7,000.
Yeah, in-state is a really great deal.
That's another thing I would suggest. If you're not from there, but then you're going there, get an apartment there. If you want to live, freshman year, if you want to live right across the street and like the alumni and whatever your housing was that didn't have air conditioning, if you want to live there, live there. But I would try to get an apartment or something, an established residency, because then you will get a cheaper tuition because you're in state. I think it's completely worth it. You meet so many, and just in general, you're in New York City, you're surrounded by creative people. I know on the subway, if like the train would stop one day because like something happened on the subway and it wasn't moving, people would be talking, and like everyone was doing something cool. And New York's just a cool place to be, especially when you're young. Plus, you also get to go to a bunch of different fashion shows. You get to volunteer for New York Fashion
Week.
Week.
There's just different like events and things.
Yeah, there's so many different things. There's, and it's just important, if any industry you're going into, to go intern or do something that you want, just like go and experience it, because you're going to figure out quickly like, oh, I don't like working there, I don't like doing that, or I don't like how they do that. Like, you need to work there to know. Like, you will learn things in school, but you will learn a lot out of school through networking and internships or freelance positions, whatever.
In conclusion, what advice would you tell your past self?
I would tell my past self that everything works out in the end. Whatever's meant to be will be. I'm a big believer of that. Hard work does pay off, and I'll always meet my deadlines.
What is your advice for the younger generation?
I mean, hard work does pay off. You don't have to know what you're doing right now. Like, if you think you want to be a designer, I would say go for it for sure give it a try. You're young. Like, Natalia and I are still very young. Like, go for your dream. And then if it doesn't work out, you'll come up with a new dream. You still have, like, a lot of years to figure something out. You can be a lot of different things. But if you're passionate about design, maybe take a pre-college program class at FIT or do something creative.
So, thank you so much for... Okay. I know, because you make fun of me, like, when I do my intros and outros. Thank you so much for doing this interview with me. I feel like it's so important that the younger generation, or anyone that's just interested in fashion design as a career, knows what it's really like. And I love that you went so in depth with everything. And I just want to thank you so much for coming onto my channel. Yeah, and if you have any more questions, comment them down below.
More questions. We can go on and
we
on.
Can go on.
Yeah, there's a lot of things to dive into, but
yeah, if anyone has any questions, drop it below. If you need a LinkedIn friend, add me on LinkedIn.
And I'll put if you want me to like link your portfolio or whatever.
You can link my portfolio if people want to look at it just to see what a portfolio looks like. They can link that, and yeah.
All right, thanks. Let me just double check if I'm screen recording.
that was rough. If you're not, that's okay. We can do it again.
Fuck. Oh, fuck.